All right, folks, continuing on with the notes for Chapter 9, starting with Section 7 of your notes and continuing on to the end of the chapter. In the last video, we finished up talking about core element number 3. C is for character. I'm going to go backwards a little bit in the core elements. Go back to core element number 2. B is for backstory. Now, there's two definitions for backstory. There's the theatrical backstory and the voiceover backstory. The theatrical backstory refers to the life experience of the character that brought him or her to this moment in the story. Now, the voiceover backstory is the specific event or action to which our character is responding. The theatrical backstory is very helpful for character development when you're involved in a longer production, to help an actor to be able to find what helped a character to become the person that he or she is at the beginning point of the production that's happening. We don't have as much time in the voiceover world to develop that as much as we would like. So as best as we can, what we try to do is find the specific event or action to which our character is responding, because many times we're only going after a small segment of this person's life, where it may not necessarily matter what happened in the character's childhood and things like that. But we do need to know a little bit about the character, the situation, the event, the background, in order for us to carry on an emotion from before where the story began and pick that up to help us in the beginning of a story. In a dialogue script, the interactions between characters are written into the script. It's these interactions and the responses that reveal clues to the backstory and the relationship between the characters. So they're pretty well made available for us, and we can use clues as to how the script is written, the words that are used, the way the characters talk to each other, to help us determine what the voiceover backstory might be. However, it can be more of a challenge with single voice copy, where we don't have interaction with other characters to help us in creating clues as to what the backstory is. We have to dig a little deeper into the words of the script itself and the overall end goal of the script to help us determine what the backstory might be. But even if after doing that, if a backstory is not clear, well, make one up. Just make something up in a way that helps you to be able to find the characterization, to find the voice that you need to give the character so that you can make that choice, you can commit to it, and then go along with your read. Unveil the conflict. Usually the prime conflict will be some difference of opinion, or a crisis, or an impasse, or some other sort of obstacle. Every good story has some sort of crisis of conflict that needs to be resolved in one way or another. So we need to determine what that is. Look for any complications that support or exaggerate the conflict. Find those things to help us at that point to create a sense of drama or tension in the way that we deliver words. Follow the development of the conflict to reveal its peak moment or its climax. Many times this is going to be the point in the copy, if we're talking about a commercial, where the advertiser's name is mentioned or that the purpose of the script is revealed, because it's going to be at the introduction of the advertiser or the product or the service or the overall message that we're going to see the overall tone change from the beginning scenario to the ending scenario. Discover the resolution or non-resolution of the conflict. In commercial copy, it is through the resolution or non-resolution that the message is expressed. Again, what's that core, that crux, the point that we get to revealing where everything's going to unravel and change from one situation to another. An unresolved conflict leaves the end of the story to the listener's imagination. And there are times where it can be helpful for a script to be written in such a way that we leave the ending up to the listener, or that we create some sort of weird ending that leaves the listener a little mesmerized, confused, conflicted, if it helps them to remember the message and to remember the core of what it is that the purpose of the commercial was all about. Discover the USP. First off, let's talk about a positioning statement. A positioning statement is something stated that positions the company, product, or service as being uniquely better or different from the competition. It's that thing that makes it uniquely it. It's that thing as to why a lot of companies, organizations, personalities will say, this is something about me that nobody else can say about themselves or their company or whatever. It is the positioning statement. Now, somewhere within this larger statement will be a singular concept or idea that sets the product, service, or company apart from the competition. And this singular idea is the unique selling proposition, or the USP. So the positioning statement is kind of a broad strokes approach as to the identity of a person, a product, a company, an organization. Whereas the USP, the unique selling proposition, is going to be that kind of just singular hook that makes them super unique. So if we were to talk about this in terms of fast food burgers, for example, McDonald's has the Big Mac. The Burger King has the Whopper. Wendy's has those square hamburgers. They're all unique to those particular companies. That's something that they have and nobody else does. The unique selling proposition. Not only is the USP important in the overall message of the copy, but when you understand the uniqueness of whatever it is you're talking about, that knowledge alone can shade your entire performance. Because generally it's going to be that unique selling position that is going to be the thing that really stands out when you are delivering lines of copy. That's going to be the thing that is, by and large, going to be the main message that a script writer wants a listener to hear. So it's very important that we understand what that is and what impact that has on the way that we do a read. Make the copy your own. Use your imagination and bring something of yourself into the copy. Now, we've talked about the fact that we don't want ourselves overshadowing the character or the message whenever we give a read to something. But it doesn't mean that we are completely devoid of ourselves whenever we're giving voice to something. We do bring something of ourselves, our own style, our own perspective, the way that we imagine how things play out in our heads as we read a script. And these are some of the things that we offer that are unique to us and therefore creates our signature voice, if you will. So don't be afraid to add a little bit of you into what you are doing, the way that you approach things, the way you think about things, the way that you perceive a character, or the way that certain lines should be read. Bring a little bit of something of yourself into the copy to be able to give those lines that unique sort of delivery that only you can provide. Now, creating tension. It is important to be specific when defining a scene or character and to commit to the choices that you make. We've talked about this in this chapter, and we've talked about it off and on pretty much throughout the course. We have to make decisions on what it is that we read, how to interpret what we read, and then to commit to that. One thing we can do is use specific terms that creates tension in your body that can be heard in your voice. Now, as we do that, words have different connotations to them. The way words are delivered are going to personify that connotation. And when we hear those things, when we speak those things, it creates within our bodies this sort of reaction, whether it's a relaxed or a tense one. If it's something that's going to trigger a certain emotion within us. So we want to make sure that our choices are geared towards making those things happen. Without tension, you'll be unable to create drama. So when we're talking about tension here, we're talking about helping that conflict aspect to be able to be drummed up. This is essential for capturing and holding the attention of the listener. We perk up when something is amiss or when there's an issue that needs to be solved. And many times, a good storyline is going to have the solution to that or the end result of what is happening over the course of the story or the lines that are being told. So we have to be able to deliver that. And that may mean that we actually physically feel what is going on in the script so that our voice can reflect the things that we are actually feeling as we give interpretation to our character. Look for question marks in the copy. Now, when we're talking about question marks here, we're talking about opportunities for dramatic punctuation. They may not necessarily be literal question marks that are written on the page. These are what we're talking about as words or phrases in the copy that will give you the opportunity to ask a question. So say your script begins with a line saying, "When you're driving down the road, what do you picture as a road? Is it a 2-lane country road, kind of, going over the river and through the woods to grandmother's house? Are you picturing a divided highway? Are you picturing yourself in a convertible, kind of cruising and having a leisurely drive? Or are you in rush hour traffic?" Those are things that we're talking about and looking for question marks in the copy. And you're going to try to find as many of those as you possibly can within a script so that you're coming up with a lot of questions, and the questions that are asked should all be related to each other in such a way that you determine what the answers to those questions are. And as you give voice to the script, you speak in such a way that you recognize the question and deliver the answer that may be just what is needed to answer the question that the listener may wind up asking in his or her mind as he or she hears what you have to say. Now, finally, some tips for wood shedding. First off, develop your wood shedding skills so that they become automatic. We do have the script analysis worksheet available for you. It is a guide to help you to be able to think about some things that perhaps you hadn't thought of before you pick up a piece of copy. But as you get used to looking at scripts and determining what you need to do with them, you won't need a script analysis worksheet because you'll be able to look at it and determine for yourself all the things that need to be done. Look under the surface to discover the subtlety and nuance of the copy. In other words, look for the subtext. What is actually going on underneath and despite the words on the page? Don't settle on your first choices. First choices are a great place to start, and many times our intuition is going to lead us in the right direction. But there may be some things that we're not seeing that we need to consider. We discover those through script analysis. Always experiment and test different options for delivery of a line. Always experiment and test different options for delivery of a line. Always experiment and test different options for delivery of a line. Get what I'm saying? Say something in different ways, in different tones, and different inflections, and you may, out of all of those, find what the true meaning of that line should be. Explore emotion, attitude, pacing, rhythm, tempo, and so on to reveal alternate choices. So when you're saying that line in several ways, say it with different inflections. Say it with different emphases and pausing and all those sorts of things. And it will help you to be able to see that a line can be delivered in just such a perfect way as you're playing around and doing a little trial and error. Look for keywords and catchphrases. These are things that can really help make a piece of copy stand out and make them memorable for the listener. And if those things are written into the script, you want to take advantage of them as best as you possibly can. Mark your script with a pencil. It's inevitable that at least some of your choices will change. So marking your copy is good if you're someone that is helpful. It's helpful for you to have notes. But again, just because we write something down doesn't mean that things won't change as we go along. So pencil would be better. You can erase, remake notes. Again, trial and error. Be careful not to overanalyze your script. This can result in a flat delivery because we worry so much about what we're going to do in the delivery of a line that we wind up not being able to deliver the line in the way that it needs to happen because we're thinking too much about what we're doing. Remember, characterization is something that we are trying to get ourselves lost into and trying to make it as natural as it possibly can be so that it sounds natural and authentic and believable. Find a way to deliver the first line in a way that gets the listener's attention, and evolve your telling of the story using that concept of interrupt, engage, educate, and offer. So when we're getting the listener's attention, that's creating the interrupt. We are in that first sentence, in those first thought, in the first few words, we need to perk up the ears of the listener to let them know we have something to say and it is for them and they need to pay attention. So find a way to capture that attention and then hold on to it. And then finally, look for the unique selling proposition, the USP, in the advertising copy. What makes them different from everybody else? Why should we consider this company and not the other company across town or across the country? What do they have that no one else has? And how can we convey that message within the way that we are delivering the lines of a script? So with that, you're going to find on Blackboard and also at the end of this chapter in your textbook, the script analysis worksheet. I highly recommend that you take a look at it, study the things that are on there, and consider those things as things that you need to be watching for when you are reviewing a script to give voice to. And with that, we're going to finish up this chapter. So on top of that little bit of advice, there's the usual things you have to do at the end of a chapter. Notes and study questions, get them filled out, get them turned in. And before we get together for the class on this chapter, make sure you check out the pre-class questionnaire on Blackboard. And as always, continue to monitor Blackboard and Cougar Mail for any changes or updates that might be happening with the class.